I was fueling at 3:22 a.m. when a varsity jacket kid tapped my knee brace and unit patch. "Stolen Valor, Grandpa," while his buddies filmed. 10 minutes later on black ice at MM 103, I found the same kid trapped in a spun Civic. As I steadied him, a half-challenge coin swung from his neck, the twin of the one under my shirt. My dashcam caught the moment his smirk fell, and he understood exactly who I was. Drivers, tell us in the comments below where you're watching from. It was one of those late winter nights that turns gas into glass. My log was green, my habits older than my braces. Call the marker, clock the wind, keep the overlay honest. At the pumps, the kid made a show of being strong around weak people. He flicked the edge of my third cav patch with 2 fingers like testing fruit. His friends snickered. "You can buy those online," he said. "Real ones don't wear them to fuel." I didn't look up. I said the station cross street into the mic, Pine and 8th, because memory is a rumor until a camera agrees with it. When he turned away, the lens caught a flash at his collar. A half moon of brass on a chain, not dog tags, cleaner, heavier, etched with a lightning bolt and the number 73. It was the left half of a coin I knew by feel. I'd given the whole coin to a woman before a deployment and joked that I was borrowing her luck. It had split along the seam of our plans instead. Seeing half around a stranger's neck felt like bumping shoulders with a ghost. I rolled at 0331, kept it at 42 because the road looked like it wanted me in its teeth, and repeated MM 100 out loud just to mark how the night was choosing its landmarks. The Civic blew by 2 lanes left. Kids half out of windows like cold couldn't touch them. A mile later, brake lights were pinpricks bending in a slow arc that meant bad math up front. I eased off, hazards on, triangles ready. The Civic was sideways in the fast lane, rear quarter buckled from flirting with the median. Steam turned the air into a cheap fog machine. The kid in the varsity jacket, bright red sleeves, white banding, had one hand braced on the windshield and the other on a friend's shoulder. The friend's head was slumped, airbag deflated, eyes glassy in a way that makes adults move. The chain with the half coin swung in the light from my hood, flashing like a sign I couldn't pretend was for someone else. I set the block at a diagonal, trailer nose out to make a shadow and a promise. MM 103 westbound, 2-vehicle incident reduced to 1, Civic sideways, 3 souls, 1 possibly concussed. The dispatcher's voice took on that quick, clipped cadence that keeps chaos on a leash. "Units en route. Keep them in the vehicle if no fire." No fire, just steam and a battery thinking about giving up. "Don't touch his neck," I told the varsity kid through the broken glass. "Just talk to him." He blinked at me like a dog at a magic trick. "You again," he said, not unkind, just surprised that mornings last longer than jokes. "Can you help?" I said yes, because that's the job, even when a person's last sentence at you was badly chosen. The seatbelt on the slumped friend had locked. His shoulder was trapped forward. I keep a hook blade taped to my visor for nights like this. "Hold him," I said to the kid, "so he doesn't fold." He did. I slid the blade under the strap and drew once. Cloth parted. The friend fell back into the seat like breath learning its old route. He groaned. His eyes found the ceiling and then me. "You're good," I said. "You're bored and bruised." We worked the other belts, slow, careful. I had them stay put because legs and spines aren't impressed with heroics when the road's this cold. I told the varsity kid to count with me. Counting gives panic chores. He did, voice shaking everything but numbers. 1, 2, 3. I asked for names because names are blankets. The friend, Marco. The girl in back, Jess. The varsity kid, Evan. His chain brushed my glove and the half-coin clinked against my wedding band. I knew the etching by heart. Lightning bolt, 73. A motto we wore under our shirts and mostly kept to ourselves. I studied his face for a shape from an old photo, found only youth and a jaw that hadn't made many apologies yet. "EMS 2 minutes, the radio said. 2 minutes measures like forever when you're holding 3 kids together with nothing but voice and habit. "Look at me," I told Evan. He did. "You're doing great. Keep talking to Marco. Tell him his mom's birthday. April 5th, he said. Mine's July 13th, he added, like a kid who'd once been proud of a cake. July 13th. The date landed in my chest like a coin in a jar. The woman I gave the coin to had a July baby. I forced that thought into a seat and buckled it, because when the road is counting on you, your feelings have to wait their turn. Squad car first, angled, blue wash, doors eating wind. The trooper slid a pack into the scene and asked for the sequence. 0331, roll out, 0351 arrive, MM103, Civic sideways, 1 belt cut, 2 stable, 1 concussed, no fire. He nodded. Camera? Always, I said, and pointed to the blinking red dot that doesn't ask for thank yous. He looked at Evan's chain, and then at me, and for an instant we shared that look cops and vets sometimes trade, the quick audit of symbols and the decision not to talk about them because the night didn't ask for that conversation yet. EMS took the friend, then the girl. They put a collar on Evan because pride can hide damage like an expert. While they strapped him, his hand reflexed around the half coin and he whispered, "Not to me," more to the ceiling. He had the other half. He carried it the day he died. He didn't say who, he didn't have to. The ceiling didn't answer. I did, but only in my head. You've got the wrong obituary, kid. They loaded him, and I took the lane back from the night a cone at a time. The trooper asked for my info, and I gave it. Name, number, upload link, plus my habit of saying cross street for later. He asked if I'd swing by the post to sign an attachment to his report. Yes, I said, and the word felt heavier than paper. At post 7, the waiting room smelled like sanitizer and coffee nobody loved. I signed where the trooper pointed, printed the landmarks in block letters, and was about to head for the door when a woman with a wind-burnt face and a coat, zipped wrong, rushed in like truth on a deadline. She scanned the room with eyes that knew what fear costs, and landed on me like I owed them both a receipt. "Are you the driver?" she asked. "I am," I said. "How is he?" "Stable," the trooper said, and her shoulders lost a decade in an inch. Her hair was tucked into a knit cap with a little embroidered lightning bolt above the ear. My own cap has the same stitch inside the brim where nobody but me sees it. She saw my eyes see it. "I'm Lena," she said, voice sharpening into weapon and then softening again. "Evan's mom, Lena." The name I'd written on the inside of a locker door with a Sharpie before a flight that came back with fewer bodies than seats. The name on a letter that had arrived 3 months later with a postmark from a town I never drove through because I didn't know what I'd say if I did. The name attached to a photo of a woman holding a baby with a date written in blue on the bottom, 7/13. I stood very still. The dashcam's card in my pocket felt like it had a pulse. The trooper's pen scratched somewhere behind me. There was a chair, and then somehow I was in it because knees will sit when heads get ideas. Lena's eyes did math on my face the way a person counts floor tiles when the waiting's too loud. Then she saw my hands, scar on the knuckle, old break, crooked one finger over, and put both palms to her mouth like a dam. She looked at the trooper. "Can we have the room?" she asked. He glanced at me. I nodded. He did that slow backing away professionals do when a moment needs space more than supervision. We were alone with the coffee and the sanitizer and 20 years that hadn't asked permission to pass. Lena didn't accuse. She didn't cry. She sat down one chair away like we were about to plan a chore. "I told him his father died in country," she said, the sentence held together with will. "Because a letter said you did. Because I couldn't raise a boy with a question mark where a backbone needed to be. Because I thought it was true. Records said I was," I said. My voice sounded like gravel. "I came home much later than paper did. I was bad at being a person for a while. I didn't know you were—" I gestured at the whole of Evan's name and clothing and date of birth and half coin. And then it felt like I'd only show up to steal from a life that had had to invent stability without me. She looked at the half coin on my chest, a thing I keep tucked under my shirt the same as the scar, and nodded once, like a person checking inventory. "He found his half in a box when he was 10, she said. "I told him it was from a man who was brave, and didn't get to finish being a dad. He wore it because it made the absence weigh less. We sat with that. A minute, an hour, a year. I don't know how long, because time, around truth, doesn't bother with honesty. Why didn't you ever... She started, then stopped, not because there weren't words, but because she respects that some sentences get built by two people, or not at all. When they handed me my name back, I said, it felt like a counterfeit. I drove instead of phoning. I watched too much road and not enough consequence. That's not an answer, it's a confession. You saved my son tonight, she said. That's an answer. A nurse stepped into the doorway like punctuation. He's asking for you, she told Lena, then looked at me with professional curiosity. And he said the trucker too, if he's there. My heart did a small, ungainly thing inside my ribcage. He remembers voices, Lena said, almost smiling. Always has. We followed the nurse down a hall where familiar noises live. Monitors counting without drama, carts arguing with linoleum, a TV somewhere insisting the world is sillier than it is. Evan's room was half lit. He looked smaller without the varsity jacket, larger with the collar ifing his bravery. His eyes found his mother's first, which is how it should be, and then slid to me. You cut the belt, he said. You didn't yell. I nodded. He fumbled at his chain, lifted the half coin, and said, like a question that didn't know where to land, Do you know what this is? I reached under my shirt and brought out mine, the right half. Lightning bolt, 73, the other side of an old promise. I held it without touching his, close enough for both to see the seam that used to be a hole. His breath hitched into something between a laugh and a sob. My dad had the other half, he said, not sweeping his eyes away from the coins. He looked at his mother to borrow a word. She gave him one carefully. Died. In that quiet, the dashcam in my pocket didn't blink. The universe did its expensive thing where it waits for adults to behave. Son, Lena said, her voice level and fierce like it used to be when we ran out of coffee 2 days from base. I told you what I believed. I might have been wrong. He looked at her, at me, at the seam between two halves of a story he'd been carrying on one chain. He didn't get angry. He didn't demand. He did the braver thing for a boy. He asked, What happens now? The room was quiet enough to hear the monitor count. Evan watched our two halves of the coin hang in the same air and tried to breathe around a story that had just changed shape. He asked, What happens now? I said we start with small truths and paperwork that doesn't lie. My name is on a list it shouldn't be on, I told him. I came home later than a letter did. Your mom did the hardest math a person can do with bad numbers. That's not on you. It's not on her. It's partly on me for hiding in miles when I should have shown up. He swallowed and nodded like he'd been handed a wrench and told to turn righty-tighty. So you're... He left the last word on the floor between us. I didn't make him pick it up alone. I'm your father, I said plain. If you want that word. If you don't, I'll be whatever keeps your day stable. Lena put a hand on the railing and kept the room steady without moving. There's a way to be sure that fits the world we live in now, she said. Swabs, signatures, and a notary who doesn't care about stories. Evan looked relieved to have something practical to hold. Okay, he said, let's do the boring parts first. A trooper knocked, then didn't come in until Lena said to. He had discharge forms and my card with the case number on the back. The video's already attached, he said. The part at the station and the part on the ice. If anyone online twists the first clip, the second one is the ending. Evan went pink at that, embarrassment mixing with gratitude. I was a jerk, he said to the ceiling tile. You were 18, I said. The tile forgives you. At the desk, they took our names and printed the kind of band that makes you official, whether you feel ready or not. A nurse swabbed Evan's cheek, then mine, sealed the envelopes, and wrote a chain of custody number across the seam with a flourish like she was signing a painting. Results in a week, she said, sometimes faster. It felt good to give the truth a lab number. Truth likes numbers. I drove out of the lot at exactly the speed the sign asked for and pulled into the first empty corner of a grocery store where the light poles hum. I took the SD card from the dash, made 2 copies on a rugged drive, and labelled them in block letters, Pine and 8th, Evan, 0322, and MM103, Civic, 0351. The little red light blinked twice, once to say it remembered, once to say I could put the original back where it belongs. That's my ritual. It keeps later honest. Lena called at noon. He's home, she said. Concussion protocol. He asked if the truck has a name. Hattie, I said, because she hauls and she forgives. She laughed, a sound as familiar as the first mile out of a steep grade. He wants to see the clip, she added, the one where his mouth got ahead of his brain. I told her I'd send a link. He wants to apologize, she said, to you, and to a version of himself that isn't as loud. Tell him to eat first, I said. Apologies land better with protein. The swabs didn't take a week. They took 4 days. Evan called with the results page open on his phone and didn't pretend to understand the ratios. It says the thing I think it says, he said. It does, I said. We stayed quiet for a beat that didn't ask for words. Can you come over? He asked. I will, I said, but I'm not walking through a door unless your mom says so. She's making chili, he said, and I knew that was a yes. Lena's porch light is the same kind of warm as the one I remember from a different town with different neighbors and a mailbox that used to carry my name as if it belonged to a better version of me. Evan opened the door this time. He didn't salute or posture. He stood aside like he'd been taught manners. The chain with the half coin was still around his neck but tucked under the collar, as if he'd learned something about what symbols are for. He handed me a napkin and pointed to the table like a foreman telling a crew where to lift. The chili tasted like someone who has weathered storms and chosen spices as a counter-argument. She put a stack of envelopes in the middle of the table after we'd all had seconds. You brought the paperwork you said you would? She asked. I did. Driver's license, VA card, copy of a DD-214 that says who I was, and the DD-215 I'd filed and won years back that fixed a mistake about dates and places, but not the bigger mistake that had my name on a list of the gone. There's still a federal database with the wrong box checked, I said. I started the process today to fix the death file entry. It's more phone calls than honor, but it matters. She nodded, impressed not with me, but with the idea that a mess was being cleaned up. What does it change? Evan asked. It means if a background check pulls your father's name, it won't spit out a ghost, Lena said. It means the world's math stops punishing him for a clerical sin. We didn't try to stitch 20 years in a night. We stitched 20 minutes, then got up and did dishes. Evan dried, I washed, Lena stacked. He asked the questions kids carry like pocket knives. What was he like? He said to Lena. He made lists, she said, smiling at me without looking. He wrote mile markers on grocery trips. He pretended not to like my music. It all sounded like a fan, I said. I am a fan, she said. Evan grinned, and there it was. The flash of someone I'd never met but always knew would exist if I'd done anything right at any point. We set a rule right then. No ambushes, Lena said. No surprise holidays. No expectations you haven't said out loud. I added one of my own. If you want stories, I told Evan, you get them. If you want silence, you get that too. I'm not an assignment. I like stories, he said. So did your grandmother, Lena said, and then corrected herself with a quiet courage that deserves medals we don't make. So does your grandmother, she said. She's alive? He asked. She is, I said, and she will need about 10 minutes in a chair to forgive me properly. We did the next right things in a row. The county clerk amended a birth certificate to include a father's name that had existed the whole time. The VA liaison stamped forms that make my life easier on the margins and less blurry in the middle. The Defense Enrollment Office corrected a line in a database most people will never see, then looked up at me with the kind of professional courtesy you only get when you've brought everything in the right order. "We don't get to fix days like this often," the clerk said. "Thanks for bringing enough paper." I took Evan to post 7 because he wanted to meet the people who spoke into radios and made the night less sharp. The trooper printed a still from my clip, ZO351, MM103, steam curling, wrote "good block" in the corner and slid it across like a baseball card. Evan stared at it the way kids look at the first thing they ever bought with their own money. "You can tell your friends this is what a grown-up looks like," the trooper told him. "Boring and useful." Evan laughed properly for the first time around me, the kind of laugh that has years in it. The video, both parts, didn't go online. It didn't need to. The only people who saw it were the ones who had to. Evan sent a clip to his own group chat with a 4-word caption that did more work than a speech. I was wrong, learning. No one ratioed him. One friend posted a heart, another posted a seatbelt emoji. Marco texted me a question about cutters and then sent a picture of one bolted under his driver's seat. Jess said she wanted to buy a coin online and then decided maybe some symbols should be earned, not purchased. Youth can be fierce. It can be gentle, too. On a Sunday, we stood in my storage unit with the metal door rolled up like a lid, boxes labeled with a Sharpie from when I was more ink than man. I took down a shoe box with a band of blue tape that said Lena and opened it the way people open time capsules on camera. Letters, ticket stubs, a Polaroid of a porch with a plant we could never keep alive. At the bottom, a scrap of paper torn from a notebook. 7 to 13. If boy, Evan, if girl, Eva. We both stared at it and laughed like thieves returned to a crime scene and found only flowers. Evan ran a thumb across his name in handwriting that used to be mine. "I didn't know you'd picked it," he said. "I didn't know you wore it," I said. "We didn't make a ceremony of the coins. We did something quieter." I put my half in his palm so the seam met for a second and we both felt the weight of a whole. Then I closed his fingers around his half and closed mine around mine. "Keep yours," I said. "Make it mean what the day needs. Don't rush the rest." He nodded, serious. "Can I borrow your list habit?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Start with small lists. But say thank you on everyone." He smirked. "You're going to be annoying." "Absolutely," I said. The first time he rode along was 3 weeks later. Paperwork in triplicate, Lena in the yard waving like a small lighthouse. We didn't go far. He learned how hard it is to back into a slot when someone with opinions is watching. He learned that coffee at 2 a.m. is for fuel, not personality. He learned that my knee brace creaks on foggy nights and that I still use mile markers like commas. He fell asleep against the window at MM88 and woke up at MM101 with a start like a soldier hearing Reveille, then laughed at himself because he's also a kid who can laugh. At a fuel stop, he looked at a patch on my jacket he'd once mocked and didn't say anything. He didn't need to. He held the door for a woman with a baby, and the baby waved with its foot. He shook a driver's hand who'd asked about cutters and seat height because his wife is 5'2" and drives nights. He asked me hard questions in the quiet hours about fear, about pride, about the version of me who chose miles over addresses. I answered them and didn't make them pretty. There were stumbles. He posted a photo once without asking and learned that strangers have mouths and thumbs and little meaning. He took it down, apologized, and wrote the 3 sentences we decided every person should learn by 20. I overshared. I deleted it. I'll be more careful with what isn't mine. It read better than any caption about hustle. The day the updated records arrived from the agency that corrected the death file, I drove the envelope over and let Evan open it with a butter knife like a ribbon. He read the line 3 times. Status, active, discharged, deceased, no. It is a plain sentence. It made his shoulders lower by degrees, I could see. "You're here," he said. "I am," I said, "and I will be, even if sometimes the being looks like 10 minutes at a table after a long day." We stood in a parking lot outside a VA clinic when his grandmother called on speaker. Her voice has the same hitch his does when laughing. She didn't scold. She said my full name twice for the years we skipped. Then she asked what mile marker we were at. I told her. She said she'd write it down and stick it to her fridge until she could replace it with an address. She ended with a sentence, "Only mothers and maps can make so simple. Come by when you can steer carefully." Evan and I built new habits. He sends me a song on climbs. I send him a photo of sunrise filters through a bug-splattered windshield, and he calls it church. He learned to change a wiper in rain without swearing. He stopped using his phone as a bravery machine in public. He called a veteran at school Sir, and the man told him to use his first name, and then took him out for a burger and told him the safe parts of a bad story. He asked if we could visit a wall with too many names sometime. I told him we would. "We'll say none of them alone," I said. "We'll say them out loud, so the wind writes them again." Dawn likes to come up over the same stretch of road like it's showing off. A month to the day from the night on the ice, I fueled under the same dead white lights at Pine and 8th. Evan met me there in a hoodie and work boots and stood with his hands in his pockets like a kid who knows how to wait. The same cashier glanced at my knee brace and then at Evan's half coin and looked like she was watching a magic trick in reverse. He nodded to her like he'd been taught. "Morning," he said. She nodded back like she approves of math that adds. 2 kids in letter jackets came in loud like daylight can't hear them. One shoulder checked within range of us and threw a look that boys throw when they get things for free. Evan stepped a half step toward them, neither threat nor invitation, just presence, and said, "Hey, careful on the bridge at 103. Black ice sneaks." The kid who'd almost bumped him rolled his eyes out of habit and then remembered last week and put them back. "Thanks," he said, not quite knowing why. At the pump, Evan tapped the coin under his collar and asked if I still had mine on. I lifted the chain. He smiled. "I used to think this made me tough," he said. "Now it makes me careful." "Good trade," I said. "World doesn't need more tough. It needs careful men with good lists." He asked if he could see the clip again, the one where he thought he knew a stranger at a gas station and the night taught him better. We watched it on my phone right there, quiet, the audio catching his old words and my lack of an answer. He cringed and laughed at himself. "I was a lot that night," he said. "You were almost all of 18, I said, and then you were more. We didn't film a reunion video or stage a grand reveal. We drove to a park and kicked a ball badly. We bought coffee and argued about whether oatmeal cookies count as dessert. We wrote down 3 things we'd each do that week that had nothing to do with heroics. He'd help Marco mount a cutter under his glove box. I'd call my mother from a chair instead of a cab. Lena would pick a book and make us both read it, just to hear us complain. At the bottom of the list, Evan wrote MM103 and circled it. "So we don't forget where a dumb night decided to be generous," he said. "I still keep the little red light blinking, and I still talk to mile markers like they're old friends. I still wear a brace that clicks when the weather does, and I still write names in my head so I don't lose them. The night didn't make me a better father all at once. It gave me permission to try without apologizing for breathing. That's all most of us ever needed. If you rode with us this far, tell us in the comments below where you're watching from, city, state, or the mile marker that raised you. And if you want more runs, where receipts beat rumors and people grow up in public without getting ruined by it, subscribe so the next story finds you. Next time, I'll tell you how a way station random turned into a lesson in humility, until a backup camera and a page from my logbook taught a stopwatch the difference between downhill and dishonest.